Congressman Phil Gringrey, we know him here in Cobb, but it's always nice to reflect on the accomplishments. I think when you think of Phil Gringrey, you think of service to the community, not only through his private practice of medicine, having probably delivered many of this generation that we have here, I think over 5,000, quite a few, including his grandchildren, which I can imagine can only be such a wonderful experience. He began service in the political arena as a member of the Marietta School Board and was selected by his compatriots as chairman 3 times of that organization. Moving on to give his expertise to the state of Georgia, he served in the state senate for 2 terms, was my state senator during that time, and then moved on to the national stage as congressman in 2003 and has served admirably there. So I give you, without further ado, Congressman Phil Gringrey.
Well, among Barry's introduction and Margaret and Joe's remarks, a lot of my speech has already been given. But let me just say this, of course. Looking around this room this morning, I am comforted to see so many familiar faces, elected officials, both at the state and local level, but really, most importantly, the leaders and the grassroots activists of the strongest county Republican Party in the state of Georgia, and that's Cobb County. Every leadership opportunity that I've had since getting involved 20 years ago, I owe to you, and I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Billy and I are both native Georgians. I grew up in Augusta. After high school, I went to Georgia Tech on what's called the co-op program, so that's basically working your way through school. I then returned to my hometown of Augusta, the Medical College of Georgia, to get my medical degree. The next year, I was interning at Grady Memorial Hospital, I guess probably the luckiest year of my life, the hardest working year of my life. But I met this beautiful flight attendant named Billy Ayers, Delta flight attendant, and she became my wife, and now 43 years later, is the center of my life. Billy is here with us this morning, and I really wish you would put your hands together for him. We have 4 accomplished children and their spouses, and among them 13 grandchildren, and they all live within 20 miles of us. Now, I didn't get to deliver all of them. In fact, I only delivered one, little Hank Manning, and that was a thrill, an absolute thrill. He is a great young man, but believe me, I was nervous enough that was the last grandchild. Thank God I had a good partner holding my hand. When I completed my training in OBGYN, Billy and I looked around all over Georgia. We had classmates in Kingston, we had classmates up in Dalton, Mayor. We thought very seriously about going to one of these other places, but by the grace of God, we settled in the heart of Cobb County, in the county seat, city of Marietta, and that was 38 years ago. And I had the opportunity of joining an established OBGYN practice. Some of you may remember Dr. Bob Mitchell. In fact, Bob's still practicing. And Dr. Doug Glover. And over a 26-year period that went just like that. I mean, in the blink of an eye. I delivered 5,200 babies, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And am now still working once a month at the Good Samaritan Clinic in Smyrna. So I enjoyed what I did. I absolutely enjoyed what I did. But like many of you, I was called to public service. My children were all students of the Marietta City School System. Billy and I have seen every park in Cobb County and beyond, whether it was taking the 3 daughters to tennis tournaments, or whether it was Friday night lights at Northcutt Stadium when our son was a defensive back and we thought he was going to end up in the NFL. That didn't happen, but he did follow me to Georgia Tech, and he was on the national championship football team. Well, I got started then, and it seemed natural that I would join the Marietta School Board. And I served on the Marietta School Board for 4 years. I was then elected to the Georgia Senate, 2-year terms, two-year terms, so another 4 years. And then back in 2002, you elected me to represent you in the 11th Congressional District, where you have seen fit to re-elect me 5 times. I'm now in my 6th term in my 11th year. And now, as I humbly ask you to let me be your voice, let me be your voice in the United States Senate, you need to know what I believe in and why I believe in the things that I do. I am a firm believer in limited government at every level, and certainly in local control. Nothing is more important than our lives, our liberties, and our pursuit of happiness, so long as it does not infringe upon the rights of our fellow citizens and our neighbors. I believe in the wisdom of our Constitution and its framers. They knew of what they spoke. And as one scholar put it, the point is not to keep this sacred document in touch with the times, but to keep the times in touch with the Constitution. We're supposed to have this federalism form of government where you have equality both horizontally and vertically. And horizontally, of course, I mean the 3 branches of government, the Supreme Court, the legislature, and the executive branch. And vertically, I mean the national government and the state government, the sovereignty of the state government, really the sovereignty of the people. Federalism, as I say, is shared power, and most of that is reserved to the people themselves, to the states. And unfortunately, and you know this, it's sad but true, we the people have allowed, slowly but surely, this national authority to take over every aspect of our lives, and it's time that we put a stop to it. I believe in lower taxes and a true balanced budget that, yes, can only be guaranteed by an amendment to 28 to our Constitution. If 49 states can do it, why can't Congress do it? Why can't Congress? I believe in the importance, very strongly, I believe in the importance of faith and family, and I believe firmly in the sanctity of life from the moment of conception. My friends, these are the times for a senator who stands solidly on principle. It's not enough to be sort of or even mostly conservative. It is time for a strong vertebrae, if you'll allow me to use a little medical parlance. It's time for a strong vertebrae in the spine of the Senate. In fact, it's time for 6 strong vertebrae in the spine of the Senate in 2014, and I want to be a leader in that effort. We need to get rid of Harry Reid once and for all. It's no accident that during my time in Congress I've been rated A+ every year by the National Rifle Association. I've been endorsed by Georgia Right to Life annually. I have fought to reduce the debt, the deficit, cut and cap spending, and balance this out of control budget. We are now, today, the first day on the so-called annual August recess, that 4-week period where members get out of Congress. Thank God. Thank God for you, the people, that we get out of Congress. Return to their districts, hopefully work hard, maybe take a little short vacation with their families. But of course, that's not in the cards for me right now, is it? I don't know if I missed that photo op with the 6 other Republicans that are running for the Senate, but you know what I'm going to be doing during this 5-week period. I am going to be traveling all across Georgia, north, south, east, and west. And I already know, and I will ask them, but I already know the answers to the 3 most important things on their mind. Jobs, jobs, and you guessed it, absolutely, jobs. This president took office for the first time in January 2009, whining about the terrible economy that he did inherit from the Bush administration. And I'll grant you, it wasn't perfect, it wasn't good. We were losing jobs, and unemployment was creeping up. He had an opportunity. He saw the problem. He talked about the problem. So what did he, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid did? They tried, unsuccessfully, didn't they, to cram job-killing cap and trade down our throat. That was number one. They squandered $850 billion of your hard-earned tax dollars by pouring it down the proverbial rat hole of shovel-ready projects. How did that work out for us?
The rat hole.
In the dark of night, literally, almost Christmas Eve, they passed, with President Bush's approval, I hate to say, something called TARP, Toxic Asset Release Program. Another $800 billion boondoggle. Remember, corporate welfare, AIG, Goldman Sachs, General Motors, labor unions. I doubt if you'll see Hank Paulson at Six Flags over Georgia at summer vacation this year, even if you can afford to go. Then they wasted, and this is what's so sad. This is what is so sad. Then they wasted the next 2 years on a law that American people didn't and will never want the national government takeover of health care, 1/5 of our entire economy. You know it, Obamacare. More than 3 years after that passage in March of 2010, it remains unpopular, and even the Democratic senator who drafted the bill, Max Baucus, in the Senate Finance Committee, recently said to Sebelius, the Secretary of HHS, it is a train wreck. It is a train wreck about to happen. And since then, of course, the president has decided to give the employer mandate a year reprieve. Well, how about the employees? How about the young people who are no longer 26 and no longer living in mom and dad's basement? And they come January 1, 2014, under the penalty of law, tax, penalty, whatever you call it, Justice Roberts. They're going to be forced to buy whatever the federal government says they have to buy, and they can't. They may be making just enough money to be eligible for nada in subsidy, but they're going to be forced to accept this. We're not going to let them do it, and that's why 2 weeks ago, my colleagues in the House passed 2 separate bills. Number one, to give Obama the constitutional authority to do what he did, which was not constitutional, and then also, to be fair to the young people, to give them the same opportunity to get a little more relief, and to give us, quite honestly, more time to fight this behemoth. After more than 3 years of passing, it remains unpopular, and as I say, even the Democrats know now that it's unpopular. 22 Democrats, 22, 23, 24, voted for both of those bills, by the way, in the House of Representatives 2 weeks ago. As a physician, and I practiced 26 years, 31 if you count the time that I was in general practice trying to pay off those student loans. I loved OB. I wanted to do that. I knew I wanted to be that to be the specialty. But I, like so many of your children, had accumulated those student loans. I didn't want. I just had to pay off those loans. And I went into general practice for 2 years and paid the loans back, and then I did my specialty. But as a physician, I know that it is bad. Obamacare is bad for the patients, all people. It's bad for the providers, and you know, ladies and gentlemen, you know it's killing our economy. You know what these businesses are doing, large and small, trying to hold down the number of their full-time employees, do 29-hour work week, putting people on part-time, causing men and women who are trying to support themselves or their family, they have to have 3 jobs instead of 1. That's what this bill is doing. You know what? It may be even bad for bureaucrats. I'm not sure now, but there's a chance that it could be bad for them. I hope it's bad for them. And as your next senator, I will use all the power and wisdom within me to kill this sucker dead. That's my pledge. I feel a deep personal obligation to finish the fight. Our country is facing serious problems, but they're not unsolved. We can, we will, we must turn this ship of state around. But it takes strong leaders. It takes people that are not willing to be co-opted, that will definitely stand strong, that don't just go along to get along. And we can do this. It may take, as Brenda Lee says in the old song, one step at a time. But one step at a time, we can do this. One strong vertebrae to the spine of the Senate at a time. We'll straighten up this time. We'll get control, Republican control, and we'll get the job done. Sometimes I worry that we get too impatient, but one step at a time. And it starts right here. It starts right here. So I want to ask you, come with me. Come with me. Allow me to be your voice in this United States Senate. And together, we can enjoy, not only for our children and our grandchildren, but for ourselves, the greatest nation on the face of the earth. I thank you for listening, and God bless Georgia. Joe says I can take a question or two. I do have to scoot off to get the parade. This schedule is getting busy quickly. And the first hand I saw go up was Scott, former chairman, Scott Johnson. Scott?
I want to ask Bill, you mentioned Obamacare, and obviously there's a lot going on with it. And we're hearing a lot. Tell us exactly what's the update on what's going on with Obamacare.
Well, the update, of course, as you know, is the president giving the reprieve to the employers until 2015. I talked about the passage in the House of giving the same reprieve until 2015 from the employee mandate, the little guy that we should be caring about the most. But what is being talked about now, which would be the 41st vote to kill Obamacare, is the CR that's coming up at the end of September. The fiscal year, as everybody in this room knows, the federal government ends on September 30th, the new fiscal year beginning on October the 1st. If you do not pass your appropriations bill, your spending bills, which are done annually, you literally do shut down the federal government. It's happened before. It happened back in, 1996? I see some heads nodding. And of course we got blamed. The Republican Party got blamed for that. We're in a situation now where we're past a few of the appropriations bills in the House. They should all be done every year, conferenced and passed and signed by the President by October the 1st of every fiscal year. It never happens. Where God's name did regular order go. That's why this government is so screwed up at the national level. But this CR, Scott, is coming up when we go back right after Labor Day. And all of these bills, these 12 appropriations bills, will then be lumped together because none of them are passed. You have to pass them all in the House, you have to pass them all in the Senate, you have to go to conference, you have to agree, you have to come back and vote on them again in the House and Senate, and then the President has to sign. That's not going to happen. We have 9 legislative days in the month of September. So there will be an omnibus bill of all this stuff. And we will essentially, because it's really not time to prepare the omnibus bill, a continuation resolution to say, let's just continue what we're doing until we get it worked out. And get it worked out maybe in February or March. Can you believe that? A full month after you're supposed to do your work, you're trying to get it worked out. But this CR would absolutely have to be passed, or the government would shut down October the 1st. And in regard...
They can't do anything bad if it's shut down.
Exactly.
That deserves a round of applause. But what a number of people, including 7 of us that signed a letter to John Boehner of the House, are saying, and what a number of United States senators, including Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, several others, are saying is, no spending on Obamacare in the CR, or we will not vote for it. And that's essentially what the letter that Mark Meadows, the young freshman from North Carolina, penned, and 70 others signed and sent to the President, and who else? John Boehner and Eric Cantor, our leadership, as well. No Obamacare funding in the CR. And you know, it remains to be seen. A lot of people say, if you read, and I commend to you, I want you to do this, I go online. This morning in the AJC, something Pomerouche, you probably know him, and he writes for Bloomberg, makes my case, makes our case. Of course, he's writing in opposition to it, of why it would be such a terrible thing for us to do this. But you read his article, and he's got 5 points in it, and as you go through those points, you'll think to yourself, that's the exact reason I want this bill to pass. Now, we don't want to shut down the federal government. I don't want to shut down the federal government. I want to shut down Obamacare. Let's fund the federal government at Paul Ryan budget discretionary spending levels. Let's keep spending on the things that we have to spend on at a reasonable amount. But this is our last best chance to stop Obamacare. Scott, I hope that answers your question. I'm very much in favor of this, and we're going to fight it to the do I have time to go for one?
Couple more. As a follow-up, if it's not funded CR, exactly what does that mean for the Obamacare bills? If it's not funded.
Well, if it's, the question that our chairman asked, if it's not funded at the CR, what happens? Well, look, we in the House will vote for this first. These spending bills start in the House. And we will have an opportunity to vote on just exactly what I described to you. Fund the federal government at certain levels, reduce levels, no spending for Obamacare. We send that bill to the Senate and we go home and leave it in their lap until they pass it. And then if Harry Reid and President Barack Obama want to shut this federal government down over the worst bill that's ever been passed in the history of the Congress, that ball is in their court. That's what happens, Joe. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the NSA. Representative Amash had an amendment about a week ago that would have refunded the NSA fine. I know you and Congressman Kingston had a different vote on that. You voted against the amendment, and if voting against the amendment, that would have actually allowed the NSA to continue funding for a fine. I was wondering if you could explain
Congress in a long time. 9/11 was a horrible thing. We did everything in our constitutional power in creating the Patriot Act, and then in accordance with directions from the Supreme Court, amended the Patriot Act. Because the balance of protecting the safety of our children. I just gave an invocation. I was almost late getting here, but I just gave an invocation this morning at Kennesaw, Georgia, when they were doing their 4th annual race. And this morning it was for the Wounded Warriors. And as I watched the 1 mile walk run and the little toddlers, and I thought about my 13 grandchildren, see some of them in t-shirts here this morning. I thought, you know, I want them to finish. I want those kids to cross that finish line, and I don't want some terrorist to blow them up. So it's striking this balance where we don't infringe on our individual liberties, but we provide safety for our people. The world changed on 9/11, ladies and gentlemen. What the National Safety Administration is trying to do is strike a balance. And I sincerely, in the bottom of my heart, and I've never studied any issue in Congress more than I've studied this. I spent hours talking about it, listening to Mike Rogers, the gentleman from Michigan who is the chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, and classified briefings of what the collection of metadata really means, and the fact that it has to be done with a court order. It just cannot be done willy-nilly. And it's collecting phone numbers. Do you remember when you get your phone bill and you look at it and it has off the list of every phone number that you called and how much time you spent on that call and what the charge was? It's no more than that. It's not a permission.
Most people don't even know what metadata is.
And that's why I take pains to explain that, Joe, and thank you for bearing with me. It's important to know what is there. It's important to know that it is a court order. It is a FISA court order. And only when these experts within our intelligence communities, and there are 16 of them, mostly embedded in Department of Defense, when they can connect the dots and figure that a terrorist phone number offshore is calling a telephone number in the United States way too many times, then they can take that information back to the FISA court and say, look, we are highly suspicious that a terrorist plot is being planned. And we want a warrant to tap this phone line and find out what they're talking about. Only then can they obtain that information. Now, in trying to thwart these attacks, and we have thwarted some 54 of them, including blowing up the New York subway, and attacks that would occur in other countries as well, I think 20 or more. That's what we're doing, ladies and gentlemen. The Amash Amendment, think about it this way. We are in trying to find these terrorists and stop them, You've all watched or watching the series Homeland, I'm sure. You understand. We're looking for a needle in a haystack. And the Amash Amendment essentially takes away the haystack. It just goes too far. But I will commend the young gentleman from Michigan. He's very bright. He's very likable. We do need to talk about these things. I read an article this morning about Carl Levin, Democrat senator retiring, or maybe it was Durbin. I'm not sure which one. Maybe it was Durbin. But we do need to look carefully, constantly, to make sure, as I said in my remarks, in my formal remarks, that we're not trampling on our Constitution, that we're not trying to change the Constitution because the times have changed. There's a balance. So I commend Justin Amash for bringing the amendment. in the final vote from your representatives from Georgia, the 9 Republicans, 5 of us voted in opposition to his amendment, 4 voted for it. So you see, sometimes these things are not so easy. If I voted with the scoring groups every time, and I have 100% record with each and every one of them, every time they're opposed to, and I'm not going to name names of these groups, but what would I be doing? I would be pandering. I would be pandering. And I'm trying to know that polling, in regard to scoring, I want to know how you score. I'm your voice. I'll listen to you each and every time. Again, God bless you and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Phil. Before I introduce
Well, one, it doesn't require a foreign call. That's not true. They don't get the fees of the sign-off before they collect it. They collect it first for everyone. So massive false misstatements in that. And the National Safety Administration?
You are our VIPs. However, we do have some folks in the audience that I want to recognize. Elected officials, we have, if you would, when I call your name, to stand and hold your applause until the end, if you would, please. Marshall Lake, Judge Marshall Lake, Judge Nathan Wade, Judge Rob Leonard, Solicitor General Barry Morgan, Senator Judson Hill, Senator Barry Loudermilk, Senator Hunter Hill, Mayor of Dalton, David Pennington, Representative John Carson, School Board Chairman Randy Scammahorn, and from the school board also Kathy Angelucci, and also somebody else coming in from the school board. Brad's here, and then we also have Commissioner Bob Ott, right? Representative Ed Lindsay, and who else have I missed?
Tim Jones.
School board member Tim Stoll. Anybody else? We're just glad to have all of you here with us today. And I also want to thank you all for the generous donation that we made to the Constitution this morning. We had $332 donated to that. So it's 332 more Constitutions. Jack, who is introducing you? All right, come on, Jim.
Hello, I'm Jim Kingston. I'm the youngest of Jack's 4 kids, and I thank you all for having us. And Mr. Dindy, I thank you and your wife Billy for giving me the challenge of speaking in front of 2 men who give speeches for a living. I'm the youngest of Jack's 4 kids. My dad won't say this publicly, but I am the favorite. I'd like to share with you 3 things about my dad, and I'll sum it up in a couple stories. My dad is a regular guy. People have been asking me a lot lately, what's it like to have your dad be a United States Congressman? And I say, he's just like anyone else. And first of all, his constituents don't call him Congressman. They call him Jack. That's always been the case. Growing up, he drove carpool. He cut the grass in the yard. He'd go to the grocery store to help my mom out. He claims he took out the trash every night, but he and I both know that was my job. And I'll share a story. I was visiting him in Washington, D.C. Last summer. Keep in mind, summer of 2012, y'all, we don't talk about it, there's a presidential race going on. And we were talking to a reporter in the hallway of the U.S. Capitol. It was my dad, me, and a reporter. We were talking, an empty hallway, the 3 of us. And Congressman Ron Paul walks by. And my eyes get big because he's running for president. I say, this is great, because I knew my dad knew who Ron Paul was because he played baseball with his son Rand. And I got real excited. My dad's going to introduce me to Ron Paul. This is great. So I'm watching him walk by, and we're talking to this woman. And I'm watching him, and I watch Ron Paul leave us, walk out of the hallway, and the the woman keeps talking, my dad doesn't break eye contact with her, and as soon as she's done talking, or as soon as she's finished talking, I say, I'm dumbfounded, Dad, why would you not introduce me to a presidential candidate? And my dad says, well, that would have been rude to interrupt her. And I think that's the kind of guy he is. I told him that story last night. He didn't even remember it. But that's just one of the many things, so you get an idea of the environment I grew up in. Secondly, my dad is frugal by nature. How many of y'all grew up without cable TV? Now, I wanted cable TV, and you wouldn't know it that I didn't grow up with it, because I'm not.
No TV.
I didn't make all A's in school, regardless of the distraction of cable. This suit, we wore hand-me-down clothes. This suit, I inherited a year ago from an older brother. Hopefully that's not an obvious thing. But my car that I drive an F-150, and it's had 4 previous owners, and 3 of them have been Kingstons. The guns we go hunting with have usually been owned by a grandparent or a great uncle, and that's a true story. Lastly, my dad is a principled guy. Growing up, we were taught to go to church every Sunday. We prayed before every meal. As a family, my dad made an effort to get home from work and spend time with us. He made us clean the garage. He made us sweep the floor. He made us do dishes. And I hated that at the time, which is why I remember it so well. But the point is, what he was doing was installing work ethic in the next generation of Kingstons. I'll tell you one last quick story which sums up my dad. When he coached me 6th grade basketball, our team was called the Jaguars. We had 2 coaches. We had Coach Jones, who only cared about winning the game at the 6th grade level. He was very intense. I think I was 12 years old. We had Coach Kingston, who wanted everybody to play. His job was to make sure that Coach Jones didn't let his judgment get clouded by his ambition to win. But there was one kid in particular my dad would always let play, and Zach was terrible at basketball. And I'd always get mad at Dad and say, you know, the longer he plays, the more likely we are to lose. And I have a shelf, empty shelf, in my room as to where that championship trophy would have gone. But my dad always made sure everyone had equal playing time, despite Coach Jones's efforts to allow the tall kids to play. But it wasn't until last Christmas when I saw Zach, and I didn't know this at the time, and him and his mom shared it to me. He said, you know, growing up, I didn't have a dad. And your dad always treated me as if I was a basketball star. And that really, I think, speaks volumes of my dad, because he sees everybody as equal, and it doesn't matter who he's talking to, but he treats everyone the same. Anyway, appreciate y'all having me. My dad has been a great father, a great mentor, most importantly, a great friend, and I think he'd make a great United States Senator.
Jim, thank you very much, and if you want to own this suit one day, you have to continue to introduce him. It's a good thing. Libby and I have been married for 33 years. We have 4 children. Jim is the youngest, and Fred, you remember when we were in the General Assembly, they'd all come and wreak havoc on the floor, which was a good thing, trying to disrupt the process of government. But my oldest child is a rock and roll singer. I have my second one works for Northwestern Mutual, and the third one works for Blackberry, and then Jim works for clapping. So I appreciate y'all. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself, but I just want to say right off the top, in terms of some of the conservative credentials I have. A lifetime rating with NRA is A+, with National Right to Life 100%, National Federation of Independent Businesses 100%, American Conservative Union 95%. But the thing I'm most proud about is Keith Overman has named me worst person in the world 3 different times. He's one of these, victims of the Obama unemployment or not. I know Keith was trying to get another job. I was just sorry to get him off the air because I wanted to keep running up that score. I grew up in Athens. My dad was a college professor. My aunt actually lived in Marietta, and when we were kids, it was a huge thrill to come up and go ice skating at Park Air Mall. I don't know if any of y'all remember that ice skating right there. You know, these little southern kids learning how to ice skate. My parents wanted us to be exposed to all these things. But you know, I grew up in good times. You know, in a time when there were really great public schools, we would walk home from, and you said, yes ma'am, and no sir, and you didn't talk back to your teacher or anybody of authority. There were 3 channels on TV, as y'all remember, 2, 5, and 11, and then you would never be caught dead watching Channel 8, which was horrible. And you could hang out watching TV in the afternoons anyhow. You were out doing things. Of course, you never leave the house with your chores undone, but that was the world. Sundays, the whole town closed up, and you know, just a lot of good times. But doesn't mean that my life was without tragedy. We lost a sister, a big emotional issue. If you ever lost somebody in your family, my parents are divorced now. Things weren't perfect, but you know what? Things were doggone good, and I'm happy to have grown up when I did. I learned a lot. My dad was raised up during the Depression. He was raised up in hard times. He instilled of us, because of that experience that he had, frugality and hard work. We never, ever left a room with the lights on. We never brushed our teeth with the water running. He would always say, waste not, want not. And Jim, hate to say it, Jim's the only one who's worn hand-me-down clothes. Fortunately, though, I had 3 sisters, so I didn't have to wear their dresses. You know, it didn't mean you went without. I mean, you had a baseball glove, but you just knew you weren't to lose it. You had a bicycle, but you brought it in every single night. You took care of your things. When I leave the congressional office in Washington, D.C., I turn the lights out. We use folders 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 times because there's no reason to throw them out just because somebody else is paying for them. As a congressman, I've returned over $1 million to taxpayers in unspent office equipment and rent and so forth. Spending your money. As legislative branch chairman, when we built what I consider one of the biggest boondoggles in Washington, D.C., and that's the Capitol Visitor Center, and the cost tripled, I raised so much cane about it and fought Republicans about it that Denny Hastert, Speaker of the House, took the gavel away from it. But I believe I did the right thing for the right reason. As chairman of the Ag Appropriations Committee, I cut spending $3.6 billion, a bill that I had to negotiate with Dick Durbin on, and it was signed by President Obama. You can get things done if you stick to your